Welcome to this special episode of the 10 Dimensions of Wellness. Today, I'm joined by someone who's walked beside me through every chapter of our early lives. It's my brother, Nehemiah. We grew up in the same home, many of the same experiences, witnessing the same silences, navigating the same shadows, and finding light in music, art, in each other. But even in that shared story, there were questions about love, about belonging, about who got seen, who stayed quiet. We've argued, we've laughed, drifted, found our way back. And in this conversation, we're talking about our childhood, healing, faith, creativity, and the kind of sibling bond that keeps evolving with time. This is about being honest and curious and open hearted as we remember who we were, who we are, and who we are becoming. So settle in. This is us, raw, reflective, and real. Let's welcome my brother.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello. God
brother.
bless. How are you, sis?
I'm good. How are you? I know we talk all the time, but we haven't seen each other. We need to like maybe FaceTime more or something like that so we can see each other's faces.
uh, I mean, I'd love to see your face, but I don't know if seeing mine is a good thing all the
Stop it. Stop it. So I'm going to
time.
start with our shared experiences and stories growing up. So I'm going to ask you, and mind you, you can ask me questions too. Like if something pops up for you, we're just going to like act like this is a conversation. And I have my questions here because I didn't want to forget anything. So I might be looking down when I ask things. So I'm going to
Awesome.
start by asking.
I thought that was a beautiful intro, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's us. That's us.
Yeah. Well
How would
thought
you
out.
describe our dynamic growing up as siblings?
Our dynamic, you being an older sibling, kind of already having a relationship with mom, our mother. I think that yeah, you guys had a bond, a sweet bond, um, a sisterly bond. From my eyes, a female
Mhm.
bond that was very sweet. And I think that um, not everybody gets the chance to have both their parents in the household. Sometimes not even a single parent in the household, but I think that your dynamic being a little closer to mom, I felt maybe a little more distant and out of just maybe a step behind or a little out of the frame as much, maybe because you were female and I was the only
Mhm.
male in the house. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but I don't think that affected the way we were. I mean, being young, we were just young and, still coming out of the darkness of our own ignorance, as we all do.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, we were both figuring stuff out on our own more than we probably needed to. We probably could have relied on each other. If
Each
I
other
was less
more.
of a
Yeah.
if I was less of a knucklehead and willing to listen at the time, but I think that's maybe how we come around to this point where we are now. We're both adults, and I think we cherish our relationship. We talk openly,
Yeah.
and but growing up, you were the big sister, so I tried not to get on your nerves too much. I know I did quite often, but nothing but love, nothing but
Yeah.
love. And whenever I think about you as a child, I always just think of you with a smile on your face. Always just smiling and always just beaming with joy. Even
Yeah.
though as we got older, you may have spoken on some things that you didn't always feel that way. It was kind of a surprise to me. But
Yeah.
I've always loved you. I always looked up to you. I've always admired you. You're you're you were very studious. You like to read. You were a good person. So I always felt like I needed a little bit more of mocha in
Yeah.
in my in my
That's my
personality.
brother's nickname for me, Mocha. And for me, when I think about you as a little brother, you were the little brother, the, typical little brother, um, doing things that would get on their big sister's nerves. That's what kids do. But I always knew how talented you were. You were always an artist, like from the womb. And I used to feel a little envious because I didn't have an obvious talent. I couldn't sing or dance, and you had something that was tangible that you could, show the world. And I
And
also felt like you were way more social than me. You had your friends, you went out a lot more, you hung out with your friends. I had like my little core group, but most often, mom would sometimes be like, "Isn't there a game or something you should be at?" Like she would like try to like force me out of the house and out of my shell because I didn't do too much up until, I went away to school and stuff like that, outside of when I spent that year in Texas. But I always thought that you were a little bit more social and outgoing. Do you think that there was any favoritism shown outwardly?
um, maybe not deliberately, but like I said, I always felt like maybe because you and mom, spent time together before I was born. I think you were going on 5 when I was born, and being females, uh, I didn't think that you were favored more, but I felt like there was something that I kind of couldn't connect with mom. I know that I've mentioned it to her on occasion when I was young that I wanted to be a little closer like you guys were, because it was something that started to mean something to me. Um,
Yeah.
and but I think that we both you had your grandparents, since we both have different fathers. You had your grandma Rose and your grandpa West, and so that would uh that relationship, I think, kind of, um it made things. It's not that it changed anything or really did anything dramatic, but it was kind of an understanding of, Tamika has a way to kind of, maybe because you were the only grandchild on that side for a while or something,
Hmm.
you had a little extra love from them. But growing up with the Hayneses, you got love from the Hayneses as well.
Hmm.
But no, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think there was uh, an imbalance of favoritism, but I do feel
Yeah.
like you and mom were maybe a little bit closer just because you were females and you
Yeah.
had that
And
advantage.
what's funny is like it to hear you say, you feel me and mom were closer and me not feeling close to mom at all. So it shows the perspective like you saw
Absolutely.
something with me and mom being both, female, and then I was still yearning to be close to mom because it wasn't there like you even thought. Um
Yeah.
but as far as favoritism, I thought that there were times where mom favored you because you were male. I thought that there were things that you maybe got to do that I didn't. And maybe that was, with me being the firstborn, the secondborn maybe gets a little bit more freedoms or something like that. One of the things that sticks out to me was when we moved to the east side and I had to go to Eastern Heights for middle school and I like absolutely hated it. And I remember that and that was because somebody told on us and we had to like move from the school district that mom was driving me to.
I
And I
remember.
remember I had to walk to Eastern Heights no matter what, wintertime, hot, cold, or whatever. And I remember by the time you went to Eastern Heights, mom was dropping you off. So I was
Mm.
like, I had to walk and baby boy had to get packed
mm.
up and bundled up in the car and dropped off to school. So those were some of the things
Wrapped up
that
in my
I
blankie and
remember.
dropped off. Now, that's funny you say perspective, and I seen things one way and you seen things another. I think that's the lens of being young, adolescent, kind of having a disconnect and not open communication all the way
Yeah,
around. But perspective is something, and insecurities, and things like that, that you
yeah,
don't even know maybe you're dealing with at the time.
yeah,
Because the truth of the matter is, that may have been a couple of times she took me to school, but for the most part, I remember walking to Prospect when I had to go to Prospect. I remember walking to Eastern Heights. I remember walking to Elyria High, and it
I
wasn't
walked
until
there.
my friends started driving that I had friends coming to get me and stuff like that.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah, as kids, maybe I saw that one or two times and I'm like, but I had to work all the time. So it's just,
Right, right.
immature
It
thinking.
happened.
And I don't think we really talked about that in that way before.
I don't think so. I
So
think you had
you mean,
mentioned it once, but we
yeah,
never really went into depth, and I never rebutted for sure.
yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned, about us having different dads. So, different dads. And then so we had our, shared home with mom. And then we had, separate outside. But I used to go with you to your dad's side of the family, as you said, all the time to the Haynes side. But you
Hmm.
didn't really come with me to Grandma Rose and Grandpa West. What did that dynamic feel like to you? Did you ever feel a way about that? Was it even something you thought about?
No, no, because they were always kind to me whenever I would see them. I think I went through some old boxes to kind of consolidate some things, and I may have seen some cards and stuff like that, through the holidays that they had given me and stuff. Um, but I was just happy that you had them. I was just happy that you had such wonderful grandparents that would, thought the world of you. Like, you were everything, to them. And it was lovely to see you get that kind of shine on you. And I was always just happy that you had them. So I never felt a certain way, even though,
Yeah.
I love the fact that my dad's side of the family embraced you like because you were my sister. That
Mhm.
didn't make you anything less. They treated you like, you know,
Yeah.
we were like you were blood to them
Yeah.
as well. And
Yeah.
I was happy for that as well. My stepbrother Michael, he had mentioned how my father kind of did some good things for him while he was raising him and stuff, and things that my father never did for me. But I was always happy that,
He
they
got to
had that
experience
dynamic.
it. Yeah.
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 A lot of
That's one
times as a youth,
thing. Go
you
ahead,
don't
brother.
really think about a lot of it, when you're growing up. It's kind of just what things are, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, it's not till you get older till you recognize some of the dynamics a little deeper.
It just dawned on me, like when you said that, it literally just dawned on me that I don't have a single memory of you or of us ever being envious of each other. Like, I don't think there was ever like a battle for attention. And part of that probably is we were both, and we love mom,
Reliant
but
on each other.
we were relying on each other to kind of survive what was going on in the house together. So we kind of had to huddle up, and be a team.
Yeah.
Because I remember, and I'll go into that part later because there's some things that I want to talk about that, but I want to finish about the separate fathers conversation. Um, do you feel like you belonged to one side of the family more than the other?
Well, with me, I always look at, my situation as being unique because being a Newton and a Haynes, mom is one of eight and my father was one of seven. And my mother's brothers were kind of there for me, and my father's sisters were
Mm-hmm.
always there for me. So I always kind of cast a wide net and just always embraced what goodness came along, and any shine that people tried to put on me. So
Yeah.
I always felt on both sides.
Yeah.
I always felt just as equally as of a Haynes as I was a Newton.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It wasn't, as you get older and family dynamics change, things change. But as a child, um, we were always, I think, showered with, we were some loved children. Like, we had,
Absolutely.
it was those aunts and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers that really poured into us. And I really, give them a lot of the credit of the people that we are today. It could have been
Agreed.
really, really different if we didn't have them to,
Agreed.
bounce off of. So we were really, really blessed, and we had some really good Christmases because we had such a big family.
Big family. I mean, and it was abundant, it really was. There was
Yeah.
always somebody there to, want to snatch you up for the weekend and take you places and,
Mm-hmm.
do things and kind of do what aunts and uncles do, grandparents do. But I agree that, you know, I think I modeled myself after my family members growing up, whether it was the artistic abilities of some of our uncles or if
Yeah.
it was the caring and the sincerity of some of our aunts, or being studious. I wasn't the greatest student, but I always looked up to, uh, people who could, make getting educated look easy because it sometimes wasn't always. But as you get older and you realize what your loves are, things get a little easier to study on those things. But yeah, I
Yeah.
always feel like, you know, just like with people in general, man, you can always learn from people. You can always try to emulate good qualities of people and try to rid yourself and stay away from some of the bad qualities that some people possess. But it's always not a comparison, but like, can I um, be more like this person when you admire them and you see great attributes?
Yeah. Yeah. We had good models when it came to that. So let's shift to the woman we share, our mom, and how her
Hmm.
presence and her pain impacted us. How would you describe mom emotionally? How did she show up or didn't for us?
Um, Growing up, you know, my mother did no wrong. I looked at her as she did whatever she had to do in order to do what she was doing. And, we had a roof over our head. We had, electricity. We didn't go hungry. Um, so I always just kind of appreciated her effort, and the fact that, she got us out of the projects, at an early age and stuff like that. If she knew we weren't happy in certain places, she tried to, adjust, and those kind of things let me know that, how much she cared. As far as her emotional availability, I think that she was a bit more closed off. I think that she was someone who, had us at an early age, had a lot of responsibilities. Probably, from what she tells us, she had a lot of brothers and sisters, so she had a lot of responsibilities at home. So I think that she was trying to figure a lot of things out, as we all do. And,
Mhm.
you know, but I think that she was looking to, to be cared for and be loved by a man, and really wanted that support. Um, and I feel like, that kind of that dynamic, I always felt like would maybe level her out some and make her a little more approachable and things and
Mhm.
happy at the end of the
Yeah.
day. But you know, moms, I kind of just, I knew, she had a rough assignment. I kind of just left her to it and tried not to get on her nerves too much. But as far as communication and things like that, I know I could go to her, but it was limited. I think she had
Mhm.
other priorities and things that she was trying to, resolve or attain in
Yeah.
her life. To whereas, kind of giving us, you know, what we needed was enough, in
Yeah.
her eyes,
Yeah.
you know.
And I also think, that that perspective, because I feel the same way. It's the adult version of what we know about mom, but I know when we were kids, we didn't you don't know that your mom is dealing with things, or your mom may be depressed, or your mom is searching for love. So as children, all we felt was the distance, but we didn't know why the distance was there. Now we kind of understand why, but as a kid, you can't you don't know the reason, so you just know that you yearn for something that you don't have. Like And me and mom, we talked about this, and we talked about it on the podcast too. And I was really happy that she was so open and honest and kind of, owned up to a lot of those things, and like tiptoeing around her moods, like when she was like shut down or overwhelmed. Like, what was that like in our house?
Um, you know, I say this, in honesty, that like mom, just like you said, overwhelmed maybe at times. That it was, for her to decompress, to not be bothered, to be alone in her room, a lot of times was the remedy for her. So I just remembered, like you said, tiptoeing around her emotions and times, and not knowing if she was, you know, my friends at work, they say, oh well, what's the temperature in there? Like, what's everybody's mood, out there on the
Mm-hmm.
plant? And you know, it was, I mean, I guess the effect that having to be aware of, or hyper aware of moods at an early age creates a thought pattern of how you start to operate. Should I bother her? Should I knock on the door? Should I leave her alone? You know,
We used to
um,
take turns. Remember, if we wanted something, be like, "I knocked on the door last time. It's your turn. You knock on the door."
oh man,
Man.
yeah. Well, and it's very real. And I don't think it's anything different than what a lot of people have grown up, having to
Mm-hmm.
deal with. Um, Parents who are trying their best. But yeah, it was, looking back, I see certain reasons why I have anxiety, or why I may be reluctant to speak up, or why I may keep feelings to myself, or, why I'm, the age that I am. And, like you said, we relied on each other quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I think we had to grow up in a lot of ways. I've had friends tell
Yeah.
me, you had to grow up kind of quickly, and when they had two parent households and were
Yeah.
spoiled and got everything
I
they
would
wanted.
say I came out as an adult. Like, I always felt like an adult,
I get called an
especially.
old soul a lot. I get
Yeah.
called an old soul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I was telling, Cami before, like, when we start staying home by ourselves, I was 7 and you were 4.
man,
That's,
that's
that's,
wild.
isn't that something? I can't even imagine today leaving a 7 and 4-year old at night by themselves. And she did
Yeah,
what, it's like, I'm not sure, because we were going to grandma's house for a while, and then that like just stopped. I'm not sure what happened there, but that's a dynamic where she did probably what she had to do. But that's a lot to
yeah,
have
yeah.
one.
That says a lot. It says a lot, to leave two young children at home, at night. You know, um, I'm sure she probably felt like she may have been, she has two kids. She's young, and to constantly rely on parents to kind of help out, help out, help out. I'm sure she was put in positions where she was like, you know what, I'd rather risk this than asking for help today. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, the guilt, or not having to hear someone else's opinion, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, you'd rather just kind of, you know, deal with it. Not saying, that's right or wrong, but, I can imagine being cornered and feeling like you don't have many choices, and, or maybe to give some people a break from watching us, or whatever it may be, you know. I don't know what kind of guilt or shame that was thrust upon her at an early age. I mean, I've heard, you know, things, but so having to own up to your responsibilities and not have to rely on other people at times, I'm sure, is something that you know probably popped up
Yeah.
in her path quite often.
Yeah, I'm sure. And grandma wasn't always the easiest person. So I can only imagine like what conversation or what disagreement had to have happened for her to say, well, you know what?
Right.
They'll just
Right.
stay at home while I go to
Because we
work.
know that wouldn't be her first choice. I would
Yeah,
imagine that,
clearly, because we
you
that's where
know,
we started with grandma.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we had aunts, and grandparents who would, love to keep us, but like I said, it's hard for me to, place any blame or be angry. I've only come to terms with kind of the things that I wasn't accepting as the truth growing up. Like I said, mom could do no wrong. I would just say, hey,
Hmm.
she's a single mom with two kids and she's working and she's trying and she's doing the best she can. Um, can we all do a little bit better? Sure. But as I've grown up, I've kind of looked and seen in places where maybe I shouldn't excuse the behavior or excuse certain things. Not to, out of anger, but out of understanding on why I operate the way that I do at times. It's a
Yeah,
healing process,
it
accepting
definitely
things in
is.
their totality.
Yeah, because you and I talk a lot, and it took me a long time. Like, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I finally had a conversation with mom, and I felt like I had healed that part of my life, and kind of like let that go, because I was angry for a long time and I didn't realize that I was so
Yeah.
angry.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it felt
Yeah.
good to get that out though, and our relationship is completely different now. But I held on to a lot of resentment and anger, and had no idea that I was.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's growing up, man. You're thrust into things you don't know any better, and you're forced to kind of clean up the mess as you go along, and hopefully not make the
Mhm.
same mess as you get older. But understanding the psychological aspects of things, like that, growing up in a household like that when you're young, it's we're just in survival mode.
Mhm.
We don't have the capacity to kind of, like you say, understand what she may have been going through at the time. And so um, my anger came a little bit later as well. Like my anger in, well, hey, you know what? I have a voice too, and maybe
Mhm.
me saying that I didn't agree with this or that, or this hurt me or that hurt me. Coming to terms with those things was more towards myself. But you were saying you were angry and you didn't know why, and I think a lot of people, I think most people go
Yeah.
through that because these things that we go through in life, they stick with us in ways that we don't even recognize or fully understand at the time. And so as you get older and your mind starts working and you're able to kind of put some pieces together, yeah, you get to the point where you start comparing maybe how you were a mother to Ashley compared to how mom was a mother to you, and you go, well, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have done that. I would have done things different, or I tried to do things different. um
Yeah.
and it can leave a person upset when the issues are unresolved. But as you start asking yourself questions, as you start to kind of, look in those dark corners, as you start to do the shadow work and heal yourself, and, you realize that you have to go in those places in order to get to a place of
Yeah.
joy and happiness and understanding. Hiding away from the hurt and pretending like, the anger wasn't there,
There.
it only
Mhm.
festers as it grows, so the healing begins by facing all the things that we've been running from all
Right.
along.
Letting yourself be angry, letting yourself feel the things is what they say, the only way out is through. So you have to go through all the emotions, all the stages to kind of like get to the other side. And I think, for a long time, because we grew up in the era that, children were kind of like seen and not heard or whatever. We weren't allowed to express when we were angry about things. We weren't allowed to say
No,
that hurt my feelings. We weren't allowed to say
no,
I'm mad or upset. So I think that's why it took so long to be able to even give a voice to the emotion, because we weren't
sure.
allowed. And finally, as you're an adult, like, well, I'm grown. I get to say that I'm angry
Yeah,
about something. Yeah.
sure, sure. I agree. That's a great piece of insight.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it was a, you know, be seen but don't be heard. I remember,
Mhm.
expressing myself, and being disciplined on the
Yeah.
spot, in front of people where the
Yeah.
people were shocked, at
Yeah.
um, and so yeah, that's something that I never really put two and two together quite that way, but yeah, and on top of the fact that siblings of our uncles and aunts, not everybody on all, in all ways, grandparents and things. It it took me just till recently to completely express and
Yeah.
completely, tell my grandfather when he was still here, like, I don't agree with that, or
Yes.
that's not for me, or maybe you should, instead of coming down on me, asking me why I'm not doing something, maybe you should ask so and so while they're not doing,
Yeah.
you know, because of
Yeah.
the respect level that we always have for our elders.
Mhm.
The fact that they are a team and they stick together no matter
Yeah.
what.
Uh-huh.
You have a lot of things to fight through just to really be heard on, just on an emotional, civil, recognizable level that everybody should have space to have. Yeah, it was something that was, uh, yeah, obviously it's taken us
I
this
know.
long to kind of come to.
I know at our big age, finally
Yeah,
figuring it out, but it's like better late than never. I'd rather,
no doubt.
come with it late than never.
To get
So
there, then not get there at all. Yes, ma'am.
exactly. Let's move into your creativity.
Oh,
Um yeah. So how did creativity, whether it was your drawing or your music, how did creativity help you process emotions that no one around you was talking about? Like, did it help you express yourself in a way that you weren't able to verbally, audibly express?
it's a great question. I appreciate that. Um, I think, it's something that I just discovered. I remember just being in fourth or fifth grade and writing short stories and drawing little pictures beneath it, and having some of my teachers asking if they can like grade them. And I'd get feedback and, oh, you misspelled a few words, but great story, this, that, and the other. And then as I got older, I started being able to draw out of, I can be able to look at something and be able to draw it,
Mhm.
and discovering those things within myself, was just something that, I don't really remember ever, feeling like it was an escape of some sort. Um, More of an acknowledgement of something that I was good at. Like, oh wow, I'm actually exceptional at this.
Yeah.
To be honest, to be in fifth grade and to be able to, draw things, um,
On site. Yeah.
on site. You know what I mean? Um, and so it solidified a value in me, and it gave me value in, ways that I felt like I was worth something. That God wouldn't waste talent on something that was worthless in a way. So, far as it didn't help. I didn't get emotional with anything with my drawing. It was more of just a, I loved it. It was pure love, and it was pure like,
Yeah.
I'm good at this, and that was enough for me. You know,
Yeah.
um, Music came along when I didn't even know I was any good at music, which is still questionable, I guess. But
You're amazing at
our,
music.
I appreciate that. Uncle Greg, just hanging out, in his house, and our mother's brother, the second oldest. He had recording equipment, and I had friends who were recording, and I think, I started freestyling in high school over beats and stuff. And then if I liked a certain line, I would write it down, and then, I would start my rhymes from there. And then when I started hanging out with Uncle Greg and he would show me some of the computer programs and stuff, I started making beats. And, once I got enough of my own. I got a computer program. I had a mic. I didn't even have a mic stand. I was so ambitious. I just said, "Hey, here's my chance. I got everything I need. I got a keyboard. I got a mic. I got a computer program to be able to, a virtual computer program that looks like a 24 track studio, has all the, all the
Yeah.
little toys and stuff." And I was like, okay. After all these years of, I went to the Art Institute. I took music production, um, and I didn't graduate, but I did take music production and video production there. And when everything kind of came together, I was so ambitious. I said, all right, man, here's, I had to prove to myself. I said, you got everything you need. What are you made of? What can you do? And I made a record, 10 songs. I recorded everything, every instrument I played, recorded all the vocals, produced everything. Um, and I really found out something about myself. And now I'm studying music theory and I'm practicing guitar and I'm trying to, get better on keyboards and stuff. I didn't know anything about music. It was all by ear. So that
Yeah.
first record I made, everything is like without understanding music theory or anything at all, just pure ambition and joy of creation. And, you know, uh, I don't toot my own horn too often, but a set of drawings that I had when I was young, that came up missing, and the album that I made are two of my biggest accomplishments where I feel like, what a great body of work that it stands for something, like it or not, you really can't deny it. And, I gave that CD out when I did it. I gave it out to a bunch of people and I've heard nothing but positive stuff. I performed once or twice and I had people come up to me like, I saw you somewhere, man. I know you from, they're like, oh, you performed at Ruka's one night. And I'm like, oh, wow. He's like, there was like 10, 15 performers, but I remember you. I remember you.
Yeah.
And this is months later, and stuff
Yeah.
like that is validating because, as I was making the record, I got to the point where I told myself I was kind of towards the end, and I told myself, I said, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter, if somebody picks it up, if I get signed to a record label, if I get, 1,000 likes, whatever. I was happy with what I did. I was joyful
Yeah.
of the process. I loved every minute of it, even the hard parts. I really felt like, looking at old footage of musicians in studios, kind of trying to get things
Uh-huh.
right and tweak things, So I'm like, this isn't falling into place or something's out of. I used to love just figuring all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
out.
Behind the
When
music.
man,
For
dude,
those
when
Chelsea.
problems, when you like the problems that you're having, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to iron things out to get to somewhere that says how much you love what you're doing. You know what I
That's your
mean? So
passion. I think
it's my
that's the
passion.
definition of fashion. And I think that's how I feel with, Zen Me, when I was building the website and, you know, um, designing the logo and all this. I mean, I was just barraging you and like, Neem, look at this, look at this, look at this, and getting feedback. It's like, yeah, that's how you know that you've tapped into who you are, what you're made
Oh
of,
man,
right? And you know what my favorite song of yours is?
permanent vacay.
Permanent Vacay. It makes me feel like I'm at the beach somewhere every time. And that's on SoundCloud, by the way. Permanent
Yeah,
Vacay. What's your name on SoundCloud? Is it
it's
Nehemiah or do you
Nehemiah
have
Haynes the third.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't use the
Yeah.
alias or anything yet, so you can go and see Nehemiah Haynes the third. You'll see 10 songs. That's awesome. Everybody loves that song. Everybody. I've
Yeah.
had people. I've been out and people been like I haven't seen in years, and I barely even know. I'm like, hey, yeah, I heard your. Yo, oh man, permanent vacay. Like
Okay.
what? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I actually had a
Absolutely.
friend re-record it. Actually, a friend asked if he could
You
re-record it,
told
and
me about that, but I don't think I've heard his version yet. Is it on YouTube or anything
yeah.
like that? You have to find it
You
for me.
know, yeah, I think it is on YouTube. And and another friend, he actually, when I gave the CD out, he made a music video of just he actually, him and his friends used to ride, crotch rockets and do stunts and stuff. And he used to go
Yeah.
around filming. So he took one of my songs and like edited some footage of them riding around doing stunts to
Yeah.
it. And it was perfect because I'm like, I don't want to ever be in a video or something. I just,
It's
once,
perfect. Just
oh
my
man, it
music
was such
out
a
there. Yes.
Yeah, and he did that on his own, you know what I mean? And my buddy wanted to record Permanent Vacay on his own, and
Yeah.
I've had people, be like, "Man, your lyrics are man," or "Oh, your beats are like no other," and it's just that's all validating when you're not asking for anyone to respond, and they're responding back.
Yeah, and they respond. Absolutely. That's
Like what
that's
you're
always
doing
gonna
is
be.
amazing. What you're doing is amazing. What you've been able to do in a year and a half's time, I always just say that your story is incredible and it's going to be inspirational to people who hear it. That you had such, um, uh, you know, bravery to turn around and do an about face, to no longer be on a path of something that you knew was not satisfying your spirit, your soul. You didn't find the purpose in your path anymore. To give up security, to give up, the stability of what a corporate life, brings. Most people are after that. But I think that not everybody is willing to go after their true calling. Sometimes they don't know what it is or don't know how to go
Yeah.
about it, but it takes a special person to be able to turn around and say, I'm going in this direction for myself, for nothing else, for myself. And the effect that you've had on people and the response, I just feel like, it's great to see people find their purpose. We all should be seeking our purpose. And it's not monetary means, it's not recognition, it's not,
Right.
having the world at your feet. It's being able to sustain your well-being through your daily
Yeah.
activities and being the person that you want to be. That's truly the blessing, and I'm just grateful and happy for you and proud of you, of all
Thank
the
you.
things that you've done in such a short amount of time. And I can only see it getting bigger and better.
Thank you, brother. I love you for that. I do. And we talk about this stuff all the time. So I appreciate your support always. That's a good segue though, because I want to switch it up to your spiritual path. And
Mm,
when did you first start questioning the version of God you were taught as a kid?
mm, that's a great way to put that. That's a great way to put that, because I think we're all taught a certain version of a higher power,
Yeah.
and they all have different rules and different ways of kind of uh praising what that Lord is. um so I think that's a great way to put that, to whereas you can't offend too many people with
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
asking it that way, because people do get offended and get sensitive when you talk about
Yeah.
their God, their higher power. um for me, Grandma Newton, our mother's mother, always instilled something in me to look towards a higher power, to believe in a greater,
Mm-hmm.
being, a
Yes.
creator. And I always praised her and gave her thanks for that. I always wanted to let her know that, she gave me the desire that I have to have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
So now, her being Christian, and as I started maybe getting a little into high school, maybe my senior year, thinking about the differences of just Christianity, Catholicism, um, you know, evangelical, and all the different branches of the same religion, so to speak. And it
Mm-hmm.
made me think, like, well, they all can't be right, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody has their way of wanting to go about things and what they believe, which is always fine with me. But it made me start questioning and not just saying this is the way it is, what we've been taught. Maybe just saying, well, what else is there, or how do I
Right.
necessarily, feel about certain things. So I guess it was probably around 2005, maybe, that uh, I had an inclination, and it was just something I was like, Buddhists. You never hear anyone say anything bad about Buddhists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, nobody's ever said those Buddhists. They start all kinds of wars, or they're always causing
Right.
trouble. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, there's an Eastern philosophy. You hear these little pithy, proverbs, and they always made sense, and they always rang true, and they always
Yeah.
had a sense of undeniability. You couldn't deny
Yeah.
what the simple
Right.
truth. And that really drew me. It wasn't about having to believe in, um, you know, I believe in the supernatural, but it's not about believing in certain stories or having to believe in certain things. It's more about the truth of the matter. And that kind
Mm-hmm.
of brought me in. Like, the only thing that matters to me is truth. And
Yeah.
so when things get a little murky, or certain religions um kind of claim certain things, that
Yeah.
anything outside of this is wrong, it kind of turns me off, because I love Earth, Wind and Fire, right? They're one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite bands, but I don't love everything they did, right? And not
Right.
everything they
Right.
did was, it's questionable. All
Yeah.
things should be questioned, and if
Yeah.
something's saying you can't question it, then instantly it turns
Yeah.
me
It rolls
kind of
you.
off.
Yeah. You're raising the eyebrows. You're like, what are you
Right,
trying to hide? What are
right.
you trying to keep from me? What are you trying to keep me from finding out? You
Yes, ma'am.
know,
Yes,
because that's
ma'am.
how
Yes,
you find
ma'am.
out is by asking questions. So,
Yes. And
yeah.
so I think I found, Stoicism, Buddhism, Taoism, philosophies of that were more applicable, things that, how can I be a better person? What do I
Right.
have to do in order to keep my mind positive, or be aware of how I'm interacting with other people? If I'm bringing negative energy, if I'm always talking down, if I'm always stirring the pot, to be conscious and to apply, which I think is a big thing of the Bible. People get caught up in Christianity, the Bible, and I think they lose sight of the fact that, you can believe in all these things, all these stories, you can believe in, Jesus, but I think the biggest point is to apply
Hi.
these things. Be like Jesus. Would you get on that cross and
Mm-hmm.
die for other people's sins, right? Like, that's
I
the
just
bottom line.
the conversation that I had earlier with Anne Marie, we were talking about just this thing, and I was telling her that there is this pastor that I follow. His name is Christian Smith, I believe, and he has a podcast that's called Cigars and something. But he's not one of those stiff, pastors. And
Hmm.
he had this video where he was talking about how people are always calling on the name of Jesus. They're always talking about the name of Jesus, the name of Jesus, but they always say that and then they're able to hide their dirt because they're declaring something in the name of Jesus. And he was like, what about the way of
Mm,
Jesus? It's like, it's
mm.
not just declaring the name. What was his ways? You can't hide behind that if you're talking
Whew.
about his ways. You know what I mean?
Amen.
So sometimes that declaring that name is like easy way out. It's kind of like a cop
Easy way
out.
out.
Uh-huh.
Easy way
Yeah,
out. It could be a front.
absolutely.
Hey, I can do whatever I want Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday, and I'll go in and I'll ask for forgiveness, and I'll come out and
Yeah.
I'll do the
But
same thing
how are you
again. Like,
treating people throughout the week? How have you affected people? How have you behaved? Were you kind, which is different from being nice, but were you kind to people? Did you help when you had the ability or the chance to help? What kind of energy are you putting out into the world? And it's like we were saying earlier, now Jesus, if he were walking physically here today, he'd be turning all kinds of tables over.
sure
All
would.
kinds of
Sure
tables.
would.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of application. It's a matter of, is it lip service? Is it for show for other people? Hey, I
Yeah.
put on my best suit and I show up here and I show, but then, what are you carrying in your heart? What is
Yeah.
your heart? Who are you? Who is your spirit? I feel like we're all part of a universal spirit, God, the creator of all things, and there's a bit of God in all of us. And we are waking up from the darkness in order to find that God in us. I think Jesus spoke on a lot of the similar things, the kingdom of heaven is within type of thing.
Yep.
That
Mm-hmm.
you have to come to terms where, it's easy to pass the buck. Buddhism is not an armchair religion. It's something that you have to be cognizant of. And I think that too many religions go based on the fact that, it's more lip service than it is actually who I'm trying to be. If you look at the state of the world, There's a lot of people who are claiming to be Christians who support a lot of things that Jesus himself is not even
Atrocities,
supporting today.
atrocities. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it goes to say, well, what is your spirit? What is the soul you're trying to create? I think we
Yeah,
all have two sides to us. We have that side that says, no, you can't do this. We have that side that says, yes, you can. We have that side that says, it's okay to be selfish and put your ego first and to get what you want and to, disregard other people's feelings and if it hurts somebody else or whatever, whatever. Or, the higher self, the philosopher's stone that we're all trying to polish and reach with inside of ourselves. It's of a higher degree, and it's a path of righteousness. When I realized that righteousness wasn't just for those who were sinless.
mm-hmm.
I used to think to be righteous, you had to be
You had to
sinless.
be like this all the
Holier than
time
that.
on your knees.
Right,
Yes.
right,
Mm-hmm.
right. But righteousness is just choosing to be away. Choosing to be, what you hold in your heart, how you treat people, and being part of the world around you, and not just letting your ego rule.
Yeah, yeah. So we have this opportunity on this podcast together. If there was anything you could say to your younger self, to little Neen, to little Neiman,
Mhm.
um, and to little Mika, like what would you say to us?
What would I
Those
say?
little kids in Turner Boulevard, being quiet while mom slept, and trying to figure things out. What would you say as the adult? What would you say to little you today?
Probably to the both of us, I would say that you're stronger than you think. Um,
Yeah,
that you um, have miles to go, and those miles will teach you just how um, wide life can be. And then you'll discover how narrow you'll want to walk that path. To say that uh, you may feel like things aren't the greatest right now, but stay on the path and you'll be the person that you want to be one day. Just stick to it, keep believing, um, love as much as and as wide as you can, and be kind to everyone, and you'll get that in return. You'll be all
absolutely.
right. You'll be all
You'll
right.
be all right. Absolutely. Brother, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show with me. Thank you for speaking the truth and opening your heart and being so and I just want to tell you, and I know this, but for the people, you light up when you talk about music and when you talk about your spirituality. You come alive.
I
And
appreciate
yeah,
that. It really
absolutely.
is the thing that I'm glad that I love reaching for God as much as I do. There's nothing more important in my life than trying to be a decent human being, trying to be good to other people, trying to be righteous in my steps. And I'm glad that it's the most important thing to me. And because of that,
Yeah.
doors open and, life begins. Until then, we're just kind of wandering aimlessly.
We're
And with
flailing,
music,
right? Yeah.
right, right, just kind of
Yeah.
flopping around in the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with music, music just even if I'm not making it, yeah, I have headphones on all day at work. I have headphones when I
Mm-hmm.
go grocery shopping, and if I'm at Walmart, I got music with
Yeah.
me 24/7 because music is the thing that helped me to survive. It really did.
Yeah.
In the tough times, in the dark times, where you were at ground zero and you didn't feel like another day was gonna do any good. It's
Yeah.
music that either lifts you up out of it or it speaks to you while you're in it
Yeah.
and kind of lets you know that you're not alone. So, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and you glow no
Yeah.
matter what. So you light up no matter what.
I
Thank you so
love you,
much for having
brother.
me. I
I'm
love you
glad we did
too. I love you
this.
too. Thank you
And
so
we'll
much.
talk
I really,
soon.
really appreciate it.
All right.
Okay.
See you later. Oh my goodness. So I'm so happy that I was able to have this conversation. We talk about these things all the time, but to be able to share some of the things that we talk about with you This conversation wasn't about fixing our past. It was about seeing it clearly and honoring what we carried and recognizing how far we've come. We were just two kids trying to make sense of a world that didn't always make room for us, but now we get to make that room for ourselves and for each other. So for everyone listening, your story matters, your voice matters. The parts you had to bury as a child might still be waiting to be heard. So let this be your reminder that it's never too late to speak them out loud. Until next time, be kind to your inner child and keep making space for your healing. Thank you. See you next time.